The courtroom fell silent as the 21st lawyer closed his briefcase with a defeated snap. Marcus Wellington, the millionaire, whose empire had been built on nothing but determination and sweat, sat slumped in his chair, his weathered hands covering his face. 47 years of building, creating and dreaming, all of it now hanging by a thread because of a single piece of paper no one could find. The judge's gavel would fall in 72 hours, and with it, everything Marcus had worked for would crumble into dust. 20 of the finest legal minds in the country had torn through every file, every archive, every digital record. Nothing. The original deed to the property where his first factory stood, the cornerstone of his entire business, had vanished, as if it had never existed. Without it, his claim to the land was worthless, and the corporations circling like vultures would devour everything he'd built. Marcus had always believed that money could solve any problem, that the right price could open any door. He was about to learn that the most valuable solutions don't come with a price tag at all. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Marcus sat alone in his office at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night. The building was empty, or so he thought, until he heard the gentle squeak of wheels against marble. He looked up to see Henry Martinez, the night janitor, pushing his cart down the hallway, his weathered face creased with the kind of lines that come from smiling through hardship. Henry had worked in this building for 16 years. He arrived every evening at 9 and left at dawn, moving through the halls like a ghost, invisible to the executives and lawyers who barely registered his existence. He'd raised 3 children on a janitor's salary, sent them all to college, and never complained once about the aching in his knees or the way his back protested after hours of bending and lifting. "Mr. Wellington," Henry said softly, pausing at the office door. "You okay? You've been here every night this week." Marcus looked up, surprised anyone had noticed. "I'm fine, Henry, just working through some things." Henry nodded slowly, then did something unexpected. He stepped inside the office, leaving his cart in the hallway. "I heard some of the lawyers talking. Something about a missing paper?" Marcus let out a bitter laugh. "A deed. The deed to my first property. Without it, I lose everything. 20 lawyers, hundreds of thousands of dollars in fees, and nobody can find it. It's gone." "When did you last see it?" Henry asked, pulling up a chair without asking permission, treating Marcus not like a millionaire, but like a human being who needed someone to listen. 30 years ago. Maybe more. I remember having it when we moved into this building. But after that, Marcus shrugged helplessly. I had lawyers handle everything. I assumed it was in a safe deposit box, a vault somewhere secure. But we've checked everywhere. It's just gone. Henry was quiet for a moment, his dark eyes thoughtful. "You know, Mr. Wellington, I've been cleaning this building for a long time. I've seen a lot of things people forget about. Sometimes, the most important things aren't where you think they should be. They're where they ended up by accident." "What do you mean?" Marcus asked, a flicker of hope sparking in his chest despite himself. "Well," Henry said slowly, "about 15 years ago, maybe 16, there was a big renovation on the executive floor. They were updating the old offices, tearing down walls, building new ones. I remember because I had to clean up the construction dust every night. The workers found a bunch of old boxes in the walls, things people had stored away and forgotten about. Most of it was junk, but there were some old files, photos, things like that." Marcus sat forward. "What happened to those boxes?" "The construction guys were going to throw them away, but I stopped them. Seemed wrong to just toss people's memories in the garbage, you know? I took the boxes down to the basement storage room. Nobody ever asked about them, so they've just been sitting there all this time." The basement. 20 lawyers had searched every legal archive, every bank vault, every storage facility across 3 states. But nobody had thought to check the basement of the very building where it all began. 2 minutes later, Marcus and Henry stood in front of a dusty storage room in the building's lowest level. The room smelled of old paper and forgotten time. Henry flipped on the light, revealing stacks of boxes, old furniture, and the accumulated debris of decades. "Over here," Henry said, leading Marcus to a corner where several cardboard boxes sat covered in dust. "I labeled them with the year I found them. Should be, yes, here, 2010. That was when they did the renovation." Henry pulled down a box and set it on an old table. Inside were file folders, photographs, old business cards, even a trophy from some long-forgotten sales competition. Marcus began digging through them, his hands shaking. And then, in a manila folder labeled Patterson Property, 1978, he found it. The original deed, signed and notarized, perfectly preserved. The document that 20 lawyers and countless hours of searching couldn't locate. Found in 2 minutes by a janitor who had simply paid attention and cared enough to preserve what others saw as garbage. Marcus stared at the paper in his hands, then at Henry, whose gentle smile hadn't changed. You just saved everything. My company, my employees, their families, everything. Henry shrugged modestly. Just remembered where I put some old boxes, Mr. Wellington, that's all. No, Marcus said firmly, his voice thick with emotion. That's not all. 20 lawyers failed because they were looking in all the sophisticated places. They never thought to ask the person who actually knows this building, who pays attention to the details everyone else ignores. Henry, how much do I owe you? Name your price. Henry held up his hand, shaking his head. You don't owe me anything, Mr. Wellington. I did what anyone should do. Besides, helping people isn't about getting paid. It's about doing what's right. For the first time in 47 years of business, Marcus Wellington found himself speechless. This man, who made a fraction of what Marcus paid his lawyers for a single hour, had just saved everything and wanted nothing in return. It was a gesture so pure, so fundamentally decent, that it shattered something in Marcus's carefully constructed world. The next morning, Marcus stood before his employees and announced that the deed had been found, that the company was saved. But he didn't stop there. He announced the creation of the Martinez Scholarship Fund, funded with $5 million, to provide college education for the children of every employee in the company. He announced that every janitor, security guard, and maintenance worker in his building would receive a 50% salary, increase effective immediately. And then he announced something that shocked everyone. Henry Martinez was being promoted to Vice President of Operations, a newly created position designed to ensure that the people who kept the company running, the ones everyone overlooked, would have a voice at the highest levels of decision-making. Henry tried to refuse, saying he was just a janitor, that he didn't have a college degree or business training. Marcus looked at him with tears in his eyes and said, You have something better. You have wisdom, attention to detail, and a heart that cares about doing what's right. Those are qualities I can't teach, and they are more valuable than any degree. The story spread quickly, first through the company, then through the industry, and eventually across the country. News outlets picked it up. The millionaire saved by a janitor. The document that 20 lawyers couldn't find. But what resonated most with people wasn't the dramatic rescue of a business empire. It was what came after. Marcus Wellington changed. He started learning the names of every person in his building. He had lunch with the cleaning crew, coffee with the security guards. He discovered that the young woman who cleaned his office was putting herself through nursing school. The man who fixed the elevator was a veteran struggling with medical bills. The woman who tended the lobby, Plants, was supporting her aging parents on minimum wage. Each story broke his heart and opened it wider. Within a year, Wellington Industries became known not for its products, but for its culture. Employee satisfaction soared. Turnover dropped to nearly zero. Productivity increased not because Marcus demanded it, but because people genuinely wanted to work for a company that saw them as human beings, not just cogs in a machine. Henry Martinez, now comfortably settled in his new role, never forgot where he came from. He still arrived early sometimes, just to help the night cleaning crew when they were short-staffed. He told anyone who would listen that he was the same person he'd always been. The job title didn't matter as much as how you treated people. 3 years after that fateful night in the basement, Marcus stood at a company gathering, looking out at the faces before him. I spent 47 years believing that success was about strategy, about outthinking the competition, about having the best lawyers and the biggest bank account. One man with a kind heart and a good memory taught me that I'd been wrong about everything that mattered. The solution to my biggest problem wasn't in a vault or a law library. It was in the wisdom of a man I'd walked past 1,000 times without really seeing. Henry didn't just save my company. He saved me. The room erupted in applause, but Marcus wasn't finished. From now on, every new executive in this company will spend their first month working alongside our maintenance, cleaning, and support staff. Not to supervise them, but to learn from them. Because the people we overlook are often the ones who see things most clearly. As Marcus stepped down from the podium, Henry was waiting with that same gentle smile. "You didn't have to do all this, Mr. Wellington." "Yes, I did," Marcus replied. "You showed me that the most valuable things in life aren't expensive." Kindness doesn't cost anything. Attention costs nothing but time. Compassion is free, but together they're worth more than everything I've built. That night, as Henry headed home to his family, he passed his old janitor's cart sitting in the storage room, now a memento of a different life. He smiled, remembering the Marcus Wellington who once sat alone in his office, broken and desperate, and the conversation that changed everything. Sometimes the biggest solutions come from the smallest gestures. Sometimes wisdom wears work boots instead of Italian leather shoes. And sometimes the person who saves your empire is the same person you never bothered to see until the moment you had no choice but to look. The janitor found what 20 lawyers couldn't because he'd been paying attention all along. And the millionaire learned that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the dignity with which we treat every human being who crosses our path. In the end, everyone changed, and the world became just a little bit better because one man stopped to listen and another man finally learned to see.